Locations can be a complete pain, probably my most hated thing to deal with when it comes to making anything. It's incredibly hard to find something that fits, and if you're low to no budget, what you can and cannot do tends to be a very small lane. But you can fake it or transform what you do have with some tricks in post-production. These tricks can go from the very simple to the more complicated, so let's just start with the simple. Okay, so an open field is going to be one of the easiest locations that you can get, but often we are restricted by time or other factors. Or maybe you're unhappy with how full or thin the trees are, or again, are short on time and have a busy road right next to your best nearby option, like this here. And this is some of the easiest to transform in post. To do that, we are taking a frame into Photoshop, then we can start with removing smaller areas so that these elements aren't driving any detail when we use generative fill. Then we expanded the grass, filled in the gaps in the tree behind Emily, then completed the tree line before again hiding the plate and exporting to a PNG. In After Effects, with the generative fill layer in the comp, we'll use a mask and duplicate to separate the ground from the trees. Then on the trees layer, use Turbulent Displace with a low amount, size, boosted complexity, and animated evolution to try and roughly match the wind movement that we see on the original trees. And once again, we'll rotobrush Emily on a new layer to place her above the generative fill layers. In the plate, we can see some insects flying around but are hidden by the generative fill layers, so we can add these back in using assets from actionvfx.com, giving us this. Now, these are incredibly simple examples, but you can see how we can adjust very small things and make a huge change in your image, like this one here, which is just this. And a shot like this next to a city street can be very complicated for plenty of reasons. So instead of leaving the office, we grabbed this strip of brick-style paneling, slapped it against the wall outside, and had our shot. Again, we're using generative fill to extend the brick on the right, and to add some interest, we went with a doorway here. Then on the left, we extended again, but wanted the wall to end, revealing a street. To do that, we grabbed some stock footage, but we want to create a road area now, which we can blend into the rest of the background later on. Up top, we added a metal compartment to break up the continuous brick pattern, and you could try adding things like graffiti to the wall, but it felt a bit too in your face for us on this one, so we just chose to do more subtle details, adding minor destruction to vary the bricks, which also added depth to what was a thin piece of fake wall. We also used some masks to pick and choose what we wanted in, and eventually we had this. Inside of After Effects, we masked just Emily's section of the footage to keep it visible, masked the extended wall to remove the street, and another mask to keep the bottom section of the road with a high feather to blend. Then we found this free stock footage from pexels.com of a street with passing cars, which we scaled up and framed to match our shot before using hue and saturation, curves to color correct to our scene, and a camera lens blur to knock it slightly out of focus. And finally, we added a couple of grunge textures set to multiply to add further detail to the wall, giving us this. The quality of the free stock footage isn't the best, so it is notching the effect down a touch, but you could always swap that out for something you're actually paying for that has much higher quality. We can also take the grade further or add a camera shake to help as well. And to keep driving the idea home, I do get how 101 that is, and often might not be right for your final shot, but this sort of idea can and has been very useful for me in post-production, trying things out and showing my collaborators to get us all locked to the same page and then doing a much better shot later on. But then, of course, we can take it much further than these simple ideas into something that would be our final shot like this.
Goodbye.
For this one, we actually did have to find a location to shoot our plate. To save from having to make it complicated or need a budget, we just ran in and grabbed our shot and left. But that does bring me to today's sponsor, which is Producer. We've shown Producer on the show before and dug pretty deep into what it is. You can find a link to that in the notes below, but it's an amazing tool for creators that helps organize the entire process all in one place. Inside of your project, you have 5 main tabs that take you from development all the way through delivery. And once you drill down to each phase, you can very much tell that this was made by actual working filmmakers that understand the process and what's needed. So if you're a producer, line producer, director, cinematographer, editor, or in the location or casting departments, this is absolutely for you. Like we showed in our other episode, this app helps build out the process with casting, shot listing, storyboards, to shoot days where you can utilize the shot list you created to schedule out your shoot and stay organized on your actual production days. And then even in post with the ability to upload the project for notes and further collaboration. But again, we showed all of that in another episode. However, since then, Producer has continued to improve. We now have larger file transfers with no size limit and no need for other apps, link sharing with the ability to view, comment, and download from any device. They're also getting out of beta with a much more reliable application and thousands of users. Something that I love here is what it gives us when scouting locations. We can have our team member go out scouting, shoot videos and pictures with their phone, then immediately upload it to the app for me to review, give my thoughts, and so on. That sort of thing really does streamline the process and help us move more quickly and efficiently throughout each production. If you want to try Producer for yourself, and you absolutely should, you can get 15% off on all plans until May 24th by using the coupon code FilmRiotYearly for a yearly plan and FilmRiot Monthly for a monthly plan. All those details and a link to our in-depth review in the notes below.
Goodbye.
But once we had our location, we grabbed our Ronin 4D to get the shot silky smooth, and once we had our shot, we shot it over to Matus to do his wizardry. We could do 2 full episodes on a shot like this, but what I'm really wanting to do here is cover concepts that you can take and run with. So we're going to break this down to 4 simple phases. First, we track the shot using the built-in camera tracker inside of After Effects. Then, using the Blender add-on called AE to Blend, we were able to transfer our solve to Blender. Then you'll make sure to set the correct scene frame rate, lens, and sensor width once you're inside of Blender. Now you can turn on the camera overlay so that we can see our footage and line everything up to the correct axis. And once everything is all lined up, we will move to the first frame of our shot and start modeling a low poly version of our environment in 3D. Since we're modeling from the camera's perspective, and if we have a good solve and match everything perfectly during the tracking, everything should line up just fine. But after the low poly model of our environment is done, we will project the footage back to it. We're doing this so that we can use that geometry with an emission shader to project the lights back to our CG objects later on. We're also using this geometry to act as a shadow catcher to capture all CG shadows that we will be comping together later as well. We wanted to add a very stylistic future feel to our world, so we gathered some references from Children of Men, Fallout, and a bunch of other things to build out our reference board. Then we can start to block out our shot, which the blockout acts as a very first layer where everything should be going in our shot. It's just cubes and other primitive shapes placed around our 3D scene to give us a sense of the final form and a blueprint to build on top of. Once we have our blocking done, we can start filling the scene with assets, which is all about the vision of the specific project. Most of the models were made from scratch to fit our scenes perfectly, because Matus. Then we added neon signs, hologram signs, big LCD screens, and then just kept throwing stuff at it until we were happy with the result. Again, just placing things, seeing how it felt, then refining. A render layer setup was very basic as well. Remember that shadow catcher mentioned earlier? We used that one on a separate layer to catch all of the shadows from our CG objects. We've made projected footage with emission material to act as a holdout to give us a mask for our CG objects, and at the same time making it invisible to the CG camera, since we only want to capture its reflections and not the geometry itself. So in the end, we have a total of 3 different layers. We have our live footage, which acts as a base layer for everything. We put CG shadows on top of it and masked out unnecessary bits, and on top of everything we put our main CG layer. We did a few color adjustments, camera lens blur, masked different parts of the layer, and gave it a bit of a tint effect to mimic atmosphere. Then comped all of that together inside of After Effects to have our final shot. And this same idea can be used more subtly. Maybe you do want to go for more of that grounded Children of Men look. Or maybe you want to explore a more stylized idea than we even did, or extend a building upward like we did here. And again, I know that this was all a very basic overview, but the idea is there's no limit to what you can try. With just a little practical to build off of, you can extend your ideas out into the fantastic to create massive worlds and concepts. So look around at what you have accessible to you and think about how you can build on top of that to tell your stories without restriction. As always, if you liked the episode, subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified when we release more content. And until next time, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.
See you later. Ta-ta.